In this series of short videos, we will be introducing you to the Military Aviation Preservation Society, or MAPS Air Museum, and some of the aircraft and displays that are located at our facility in Greene, Ohio. We hope that these presentations enhance your appreciation of history and those that lived it. Man's fascination with flight and a desire to fly has always been with us. A quote attributed to Leonardo da Vinci gives you only one view of this obsession. It reads, "Once you have tasted flight, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward, for there you have been, and there you will always long to return." At MAPS, the history of aviation is more than just airplanes. It is about those who have dreamed of flying, those who ultimately made those dreams a reality, and those that have experienced the freedom of flight. We hope to share that and more with you in these video presentations. We hope to cover the general background of each type of aircraft, as well as the history of the actual airframe that we have here at the museum. In some cases, we have dedicated specific aircraft to local men and women. If this is the case, we will discuss why we decided to dedicate an aircraft to them. In this video, we will be introducing you to the Grumman F9F-8P Cougar photo reconnaissance aircraft. In introducing the F9F-8P, we need to first address the aircraft from which it was developed, the F9F Panther. The Grumman F9F Panther was one of the United States Navy's first successful carrier-based jet fighters, as well as Grumman's first jet fighter. Developmental studies for jet-powered fighter aircraft began near the end of World War II as the first jet engines were being developed. Serious Grumman work on a jet-powered fighter aircraft did not really get underway until after the war was over. In September of 1945, the Navy's Bureau of Aeronautics released a request for proposal for a two-seat, radar-equipped, jet-powered, carrier-based night fighter. The Grumman proposal was designated the G-75. Competing proposals from Curtiss, Douglas, and Fleetwings were also submitted. The G-75 was to be capable of flying at speeds of 500 miles per hour at altitudes of 40,000 feet, and was supposed to be able to detect the presence of enemy aircraft at ranges as great as 125 miles. The G-75 looked very much like a jet-powered F-7F Tigercat, and was to be powered by 4 Westinghouse turbojets, 2 engines mounted side by side on each wing in mid-wing mounted nacelles. A radome was to be mounted in the nose, and the armament was to have been 4 20mm cannon. On April 3, 1946, the Navy selected the Douglas airframe as being the best of the submissions, and ordered 3 prototypes under the designation XF3D1. The Grumman G-75 was much larger and heavier than the Douglas prototype. As design studies had indicated that the Grumman concept was considerably less promising than the Douglas design, the Navy considered canceling the Grumman contract altogether. However, on April 11th, a Navy contract was issued for the construction of 2 G-75 prototypes under the designation XF9F1 as a backup, just in case the Douglas design did not live up to expectations. The Douglas XF3D1 went forward into production as the F3D Skyknight. This would ordinarily have been the end of the line, but Grumman had been working on another totally unrelated project under the company designation of G-79. This program had been initiated only a month before the 2 F9F1 night fighter prototypes had been ordered. In a bureaucratic maneuver, the Bureau of Aeronautics did not cancel the G-75 contract, but changed the wording to include 3 prototypes of the entirely different G-79. On October 9, 1946, the F9F1 contract was amended to provide for the construction of 3 single-seat prototypes and a static test airframe. In addition, the contract also called for design data for a swept-wing version, which would prove valuable in the future. As jet engine technology of that period was being rapidly changed and improved, aircraft of that time became the test beds for new, more powerful engines. By November, the Navy had narrowed its choice of power plant options for the G-79. It specified that 2 of the prototypes should be completed as F9F2s powered by Rolls-Royce NIN turbojets, and the 3rd should be powered by an Allison J33 turbojet and be designated F9F3. These 3 airframes were the first Panther jets. The prototype F9F2 Panther first flew on November 21, 1947. The Navy, by this time, had selected the imported Rolls-Royce NIN turbojet for use. Production aircraft would have a NIN built under license by Pratt & Whitney as the J42. Since there was insufficient space within the wings and fuselage for fuel, permanently mounted wingtip fuel tanks were added, which incidentally improved the fighter's rate of roll. A total of 567 F9F2 aircraft were built. As a backup to this program, 54 F9F3s were also constructed, powered by the Allison J33 engine, as insurance against the failure of the J42. All of the F9F3 aircraft were later converted to the Pratt & Whitney J42 and redesignated the F9B in 1962. The F9F was cleared for flight from aircraft carriers in September of 1949. During the development phase, Grumman decided to again change the Panther's engines, selecting the Pratt & Whitney J48, a license-built version of the Rolls-Royce RB44. This aircraft was designated the F9F5. Initial armament consisted of 4 20mm guns, but the Panther soon was armed with underwing air-to-ground rockets and up to 2,000 pounds of bombs. The Grumman Panther was the primary U.S. Navy and U.S. Marine Corps jet fighter and ground attack aircraft used during the Korean War. The Panther was the most widely used Navy jet fighter of the war, flying 78,000 sorties. F9F2s, F9F3s, and F9F5s proved to be rugged attack aircraft. They were able to sustain operations, even in the face of intense anti-aircraft fire. Pilots also appreciated the air-conditioned cockpit, which was a welcome change from the humid environment of piston-powered aircraft. Future astronaut Neil Armstrong flew the F9F extensively during the war, even ejecting from one of the aircraft when it was brought down by a wire strung across a valley in 1951. Future astronaut John Glenn and Boston Red Sox all-star baseball player Ted Williams also flew the F9F as Marine Corps pilots. Panthers were withdrawn from frontline service in 1956, but remained in training roles and with the U.S. Naval Air Reserve and the U.S. Marine Air Reserve units until 1958. The Navy's Blue Angels flight demonstration team used the Panther for 4 years, beginning in 1951. The Panther was the Blue Angels' first jet. Some Panthers continued to serve in small numbers into the 1960s. From September of 1962, surviving operational Panthers were redesignated the F9 within the new combined U.S. Tri-Service designation system. A total of 1,382 F9F Panther aircrafts were produced. Rumors that the Soviet Union had produced a swept-wing fighter had circulated a year before the Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-15 first appeared at air shows in 1949. Despite the level of activity taking place with swept-wing aircraft, the Navy was not initially focused on the development of such aircraft. This was largely because the Navy's focus at the time was defending the battle group and intercepting high-speed, high-altitude bombers, as well as escorting medium-range carrier-based bombers in all weather conditions. Air-to-air combat was of less interest. A swept-wing fighter took on additional importance, particularly after the arrival of the MiG-15 in Korea, which easily outclassed straight-wing fighters in the air war. Grumman was awarded a contract for the development of a swept-wing fighter jet in 1951. Using design data developed in 1946 from the G-79 swept-wing prototype, Grumman proposed what was known as Design 93. This aircraft concept became the Cougar, although it retained the Panther's designation number of F9F. The Grumman F9F Cougar was a carrier-based fighter aircraft flown by the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps. Based on the earlier Grumman F9F Panther, the Cougar replaced the Panther's straight wing with a more modern swept wing. The Navy considered the Cougar as an updated version of the Panther, so the first Cougars were designated F9F-6. Prototypes were quickly produced by modifying Panthers, and the first F9F-6 flew on September 20, 1951, 7 months after Grumman signed a contract with the Navy for swept-wing fighters. Initial production of 646 aircraft were delivered from mid-1952 through July 1954. The F9F-6 was later designated the F9F in 1962. The first F9F-6s were assigned a Navy Fighter Squadron, or VF-32, at the end of 1952. The first F9F Cougar squadron to actually deploy was VF-24, assigned to USS Yorktown in August of 1953. Unfortunately, the Cougar arrived too late to be used in the Korean War, so it was never tested against the MiG-15, and was later surpassed by faster and newer fighter planes like the Vought F-8 Crusader and the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk. 60 were built as F9F-6P reconnaissance aircraft with cameras instead of the nose cannon. The F9F-6P Photo Cougar replaced the F9F 5P Photo Panther in 2 Navy and 2 U.S. Marine Corps squadrons in 1954. The F9F-7 referred to the next version of the Cougar that was given the Allison J-33, also found in the F9F-4, instead of the Pratt & Whitney J-48. A total of 168 were built. These were redesignated the F9H in 1962. The F9F-8 was the final fighter version. Work on the F9F-8 began in April of 1953 with 3 goals: lower the airplane's stall speed, improve aircraft control at high angles of attack, and increase range. The airframe changes improved low speed and high angle of attack flying and gave more room for fuel tanks. It was also now capable of breaking the sound barrier in a steep dive. Grumman delivered 601 of these aircraft between April of 1954 and March of 1957. The U.S. Navy used the F9F Cougar to set the transcontinental crossing record on April 1, 1954. 3 pilots from Fleet Fighter Squadron VF-21 completed the 2,438-mile flight in under 4 hours. This was the first time the distance had been covered in under 4 hours. The 3 F9F-6 aircraft refueled over Kansas from a North American AJ Savage, using an experimental refueling probe mounted on the nose. Late production F9F-8 aircraft were given the ability to carry 4 AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles under wings, making it the first Navy aircraft to deploy with the missiles. A number of F9F-8s were modified as F9F-8B tactical nuclear bombers, fitted with a low-altitude bombing system. F9F-8s were withdrawn from frontline service in 1958-1959, replaced by the Grumman F9F Tiger and the Vought F8U Crusader. The Naval Reserves used them until the mid-1960s, but none of the single-seat versions were used in the Vietnam War. The U.S. Navy's Flight Demonstration Team, the Blue Angels, replaced their 6 F9F-5 Panthers with 6 F9F-6 Cougars late in 1953. This was short-lived, however, as the Navy subsequently took them for fleet use without using the planes in an air show. The F9F-6s were then replaced with overhauled F9F-5s until 1954, when the Blue Angels switched to the F9F-8. The Blue Angels used the F9F-8 until 1957, when they were replaced by the Grumman F9F-1 Tiger. In 1956, the F9F-6P was replaced by the more capable F9F-8P Photo Cougar, of which 110 aircraft were built. These aircraft were split between 2 units. Light Photographic Squadron, or VFP-62, was an aviation unit of the United States Navy in service from 1949 to 1968. The squadron provided a detachment of reconnaissance planes for each of the carrier air wings of the U.S. Atlantic Fleet. The second unit, VFP-63, was a light photographic squadron of the U.S. Navy in service from 1949 to 1982. The squadron provided a detachment of reconnaissance planes for each of the carrier air wings of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. In the Photo Cougar, many changes were made to the fuselage structure and equipment, including the longer duckbill camera nose. The extended nose housed the K-17 and Trimetragon cameras. The Trimetragon concept used 3 cameras shooting simultaneously for use in topographic mapping. Its systems allowed it to perform both photographic reconnaissance and topographic mapping operations both during the day and at night. Turbine compressor ducting was rerouted to provide heat to defrost the camera windows. The Cougar also featured an early form of in-flight refueling with a long boom extending out front. F9F-8Ps were replaced by the supersonic Vought F8U-1P Photo Crusader starting in 1958, with the last F9F-8P retiring from the fleet in early 1961 and sent to reserve squadrons. In 1962, the surviving F9F-6P and F9F-8P aircraft were redesignated RF-9F and RF-9J, respectively. The airframe that is on display at the MAPS Air Museum is a Grumman F9F-8P. In developing the histories of the aircraft located at the MAPS Air Museum, all available resources are researched and compiled. While most of the source materials are in agreement, some of the information obtained from various sources is inconsistent with the majority of other data. If this is the case, the information that is presented represents the facts as presented by official sources whenever possible. The MAPS F9F-8P is one of only 6 of this version of photo reconnaissance airframes on display in the world. At the time that this video was produced, there were 4 F9F-P aircraft on display in California and 1 in Arizona. The F9F-8P that is on display at the MAPS Air Museum was constructed at the Grumman Corporation facility in Bethpage, New York, and accepted by the United States Navy on February 8, 1957. It was assigned to the Bureau of Aeronautics at Norfolk on February 13, 1957, and given the Bureau number 14442. On March 11, 1957, 14442 was assigned to Photographic Reconnaissance Squadron, or VFP-62, based at Naval Air Station, Jacksonville, Florida. On June 5, 1957, the aircraft was detailed to Detachment 36 of VFP-62, assigned to Carrier Air Group 4 aboard USS Randolph. On July 1, 1957, the Randolph was deployed to the Mediterranean as political turmoil in Syria threatened to further disturb the Middle East region. The carrier returned to the United States on February 24, 1958, and 14442 again became part of VFP-62's stable of aircraft. The aircraft stay at NAS Jacksonville was a short one, as on June 29, 1958, the aircraft was once again detailed to Detachment 36 and found itself back aboard the USS Randolph as part of Carrier Air Group 7. On September 2, 1958, the carrier sailed on her 5th Mediterranean deployment, returning on March 12, 1959. At the end of the deployment, 14442 returned to Jacksonville and VFP-62. This would be the aircraft's last carrier deployment. On August 9, 1959, 14442 was reassigned to the Overhaul and Repair Facility Bureau of Aeronautics Maintenance and Support Division at the Naval Air Station at Norfolk, Virginia. After a short return to VFP-62 in Jacksonville on August 31, 1959, the aircraft was returned to the Maintenance and Support Unit at Norfolk on November 30, 1959. On February 29, 1960, 14402 was assigned to the Bureau of Weapons Detachment at Norfolk. F9F-8P, Bureau number 14442, was removed from the Navy's aircraft inventory in May of 1960. In June of 1962, 14442 was located at the Wings of Eagles Museum in Horseheads, New York. In June of 1964, the aircraft was moved to the National Warplane Museum in Geneseo, New York. That would have been the end of the story for 14442, except for the efforts of one individual. Rick Mayorello, Colonel, United States Air Force, retired. The connection between Mayorello and the F9F-8P started in December of 1956, when the 20-year-old Navy ensign reported to VFP-62, located at Naval Air Station Jacksonville. Upon completion of the Navy Photographic School in Pensacola, Florida in November of 1957, he returned to Jacksonville and started flying the F9F-8P, including aircraft number 14442. In early 1958, he was detailed to Detachment 45 of VFP-62, part of Air Task Group 201, aboard the aircraft carrier USS Essex. On February 2, 1958, the Essex sailed for the Mediterranean, with now Lieutenant Junior Grade Mayorello aboard. On July 6, 1958, Essex was anchored off Athens, Greece, when Lebanon was threatened by civil war. After a quick transit, Essex started round-the-clock show of force, close air support, and photographic reconnaissance missions, including many flown by Mayorello in an F9F-8P. After passage through the Suez Canal and transit of the Pacific Ocean, the cruise ended in November of 1958. After his Navy service, he returned to Philadelphia, completed college and entered medical school, while still flying with the Navy Reserves. Later, he was approached by the Air Force to join as part of a pilot physician program. He retired with the rank of colonel after flying F-102s, F-105s, and the F-4D. With his aviation career completed, he entered private practice as an ear, nose, and throat specialist. In 2004, on a family vacation to the New York Finger Lakes region, Mayorello took a side trip to the National Warplane Museum in Geneseo, New York. While driving through, he was surprised to see on a side lot a partially dismembered fuselage of a photo Cougar with nose number 962 vaguely visible. It was the F9F-8P, Bureau number 144402, that he had flown while assigned to VFP 62. The old jet had been patiently waiting for its restoration after the Navy had sold it for scrap. Sadly, it was completely covered with graffiti. The refueling probe was missing, the canopy and windshield were cracked, all the glass from the camera bays and their components were missing, the speed brakes were gone, and the tailhook was missing. There were numerous structural holes, missing access panels, the cockpit instrumentation was destroyed and removed, the trim tab on the flying tail was off and in pieces, as were part of the vertical stabilizer. When it became apparent that the museum had changed its plans to restore the airframe, Mayorello asked if they would consider selling him the aircraft, letting him partially restore it, and move it to Magnolia, Ohio for final restoration and display. Museum officials were convinced that he would see the restoration through to completion, so the move was approved. It took a full year to submit the required paperwork and an additional 6 months to get the Cougar prepped and moved to Magnolia. During the first 2 years, significant progress was made. The volunteer crew fixed all the glass and repaired the canopy and fuselage. Work then stopped for a period of 2 years. The plane was then moved to an auto repair facility at Waynesburg Carriage Company, and structural work again resumed. More skin was replaced, and a tailhook was found and connected. After a somewhat frustrating 2 months of searching, a new canopy was found and installed. When it was found that some of the restoration required was beyond the capability of the repair facility, the airframe was placed in storage at that location. Realizing that completion of his dream of fully restoring the aircraft would require the help of expert craftsmen, he contacted the MAPS Air Museum in nearby Greene, Ohio, who expressed an interest in the project. 144402 was placed on a truck and transported to MAPS, arriving on November 3, 2012. Soon after the airframe arrived at MAPS, the wings were reconnected to the fuselage, and an analysis of the initial restoration requirements was conducted. The first projects identified were construction of a flap on the right wing and the wingtip, which were missing. Additionally, there was a large hole in the leading edge of the right wing that would require repair. Restoration started in March of 2013 under the direction of MAPS crew chief Matt Oltersdorf. The wings were moved to a stored or folded position. Some of the paint on the aircraft, particularly under the wings, was removed and the skin repaired. Once repairs were completed, the underwing areas were repainted and stenciled. In late May, the museum was anxious to use the aircraft in a static display for the City of Greene's annual Taste of Greene parade. The Cougar was moved to a viewing area in the City of Greene for display, along with the museum's Ling Temco Vought A7E Corsair II. This was the first public display of the airframe, although it was displayed with both flaps removed, as the left flap was being used as a model to build the right flap. In June of 2013, the black protective coverings were removed from the cockpit to get a first look at the cockpit glass and the general condition of the cockpit. The canopy was removed for repair, the glass cleaned and polished, and refitted in September. Also in September, cleaning and repair of the camera bays was started. The biggest project undertaken was the construction of the flap for the right wing. Using the left flap as a model, the right flap was reverse engineered starting in June of 2013. Completed and painted in October, it was finally installed on October 23, 2013. By November of 2013, the leading edge hole had been patched and covers had been fabricated for the landing lights. A framework had been developed for the missing right wingtip, which was completed and installed in December. In January of 2014, the aircraft was repainted in gull gray and stenciling was started. The markings placed on the airframe included the name of Lieutenant Rick Mayorello, United States Navy Reserve, on the cockpit. On August 2, 2014, the F9F-8P was displayed to a national audience in the Pro Football Hall of Fame parade in Canton, Ohio. In March of 2015, a refurbishing of the K-19 cameras and the F9F-8P camera bay was started. Completed in September of 2015, the camera bay now contains descriptions of the cameras used and photos of Soviet shipping that were taken by F9F-8P Cougar photographic reconnaissance aircraft. The Grumman F9F-8P, Bureau number 144402, that is on display at the MAPS Air Museum, is painted and marked as it was while assigned to Navy Photographic Reconnaissance Squadron 62. The aircraft is still the property of Rick Mayorello.